What is up, guys? We're back with another episode of the Mainly Celtics podcast. It's gonna be me today, Matt, and we are right in the middle of free agency. And I think it's been a pretty exciting and pretty eventful time so far for all of us Celtics fans. Last year, I think I was talking about in the previous pod about how they kind of sat. It seemed like they sat on their thumbs last year and they really were slow to really make any moves. There wasn't really any big splashes during free agency. Obviously, the Al Horford move was during I think in the middle of the postseason last year. So we didn't really have any big moves that really made a huge impact on our team aside from like some extensions right before free agency. But this year we're obviously Brad's getting off to a strong start. He's shown that unlike Danny Ainge, I'm not going to be too critical of Danny Ainge, but Brad cares a lot less about first round picks than Danny Ainge did. We saw him. I believe he only dealt one first round pick, but I believe he dealt one in the Kemba Walker for Al Horford deal, and I believe he got off one more for one or two during the Derek White trade. So the big trade, we got Malcolm Brogdon, which is, I think, obviously great. A lot of people, they may be critical of Marcus Smart, saying he's not a true point guard. We need a real point guard on this team. I'm personally a fan of Marcus Smart as our point guard, but regardless of that fact, I think we need another playmaker. That's why when I was talking about in last week's pod, as far as free agents to look out for possible TP targets, I was looking for Kyle Anderson because of his playmaking ability. I didn't really necessarily think we needed a point guard because I do trust Pritchard. I do trust Derek White. I do trust Marcus Smart. I think that's kind of enough to make a point guard duo. Definitely not upset by this move. I actually love this move a lot because between Derek White, Marcus Smart, and Malcolm Brogdon, I think they're all either 6'3" or like between 6'3" and 6'5", and they're all like 220 pounds or more. Like they're all big point guards. They're all guys that you really can put at 3 if necessary and hold their own defensively. They're all great plus defenders at those positions. So I think that's super, super awesome for the Celtics to get. And you get a guy that can play make and a guy that in the past has been a really good spot up shooter. His numbers have kind of dipped. Brogdon's in the past few years from the 3-point line. He shot poorly this year, but only played in 36 games. So I'm not too concerned about that. I believe for his career, he's about 38% from 3. When he was with Milwaukee, he's about a 40% 3-point shooter. Or a little bit, yeah, around 40% 3-point shooter. And I think in the situation he's going to be in this year where he's going to probably not have the ball in his hands a ton like he has in Indiana, I expect obviously some of those numbers to go down. He averaged 19, 5, and 5 last year. I expect his points per game numbers to obviously take a dip because I think he's been playing fewer minutes. But I think his efficiency will go way up. I wouldn't be surprised if he has another 40% 3-point shooting season. Like I said, he's extremely effective shooting the basketball. He can be a very efficient spot up shooter. He's a guy that is a great playmaker, averaged over 5 assists a game last season for Indiana. And he's a guy that can defend his position. So it's like perfect storm for what the Celtics needed, right? They get someone that fits their style, that defense first style. They get another playmaker they desperately needed. They get another point guard who many people said that they did need. Once again, wasn't super in that camp. But either way, they get a playmaker, which they needed, and they get another shooter. So in that trade, we sent a lot out. So it's going to be interesting how we fill out the rest of our roster. I believe we really only have once the Danilo Gallinari signing goes through, I believe we really only have vet mins to sign for the remainder, and we do have the TPE we could acquire someone with by trading away maybe a second round pick. But in this deal, we sent away Daniel Tice, who I kind of talked about. I thought was probably most likely trade away at some point, just because he's making a pretty good sized salary as kind of our second or third string center, depending on how you think the Celtics go about it next year. We sent away Aaron Nesmith, who. I'm okay with this. Like I really wanted Nesmith to be a rotation player this year, but once I heard that we're signing Gallo, I really didn't see a ton of minutes for Nesmith. Hopefully, I wouldn't be surprised if he develops into a great player. He never really got consistent run for the Celtics, but yeah. So I'm okay with that trade. Obviously, I still think he had a lot of potential. He's a great athlete. And a guy who shot the 3 ball well, at least in college. He was projected to be an incredibly good shooter. Just didn't really work out for the Celtics. And they also traded 2023 first-round pick. So once again, next year we're going to be the same spot we were in this draft season, or unless something happens, we're really not going to have too much exciting to talk about during draft time. Along with that, we also sent away Nick Stauskas, Malik Fitz, and Juwan Morgan. Obviously, none of those guys played a very big role for the Celtics this past season. I'm kind of upset about Malik Fitz. I think he's a really fun player to watch on the sidelines. He was one of those guys that a good hype guy for the bench. He was very entertaining to watch on the bench. So I'll kind of miss some of his antics. I am curious to see. I haven't done a lot of research on. I know Yam Madar is not playing the summer league this year. I wasn't sure if he's going to try and join the team for the season. It seems like this is his third year. His third year since being drafted. Or I guess his second. He's missed 2 seasons since being drafted. It seems like now would be the time for him to come over, especially it seems like the Celtics have quite a few open roster spots. I know they converted Sam Hauser's deal today from a 2-way deal to a 3-year, $6 million contract, which is great. Whether or not he stinks or he's good, still you're getting a guy that's making basically nothing. And at the very worst, he could be a helpful rotation player in maybe a year or two. I do think that Ime thinks that Sam Hauser could provide minutes in days that maybe Jalen, Jason, or Gallo, if once that becomes official, is out. I do think he thinks Sam Hauser can play meaningful minutes. I think he's a proven shooter. He's going to be able to shoot the ball no matter what. I think that he showed that in some glimpses last year. And I think his defense, he's mediocre enough where it's not going to really hurt the team. He's got enough size where he's not going to really get exposed too much. So I think that Ime really likes him, and that was maybe part of the reason why he was so okay with trading away Nesmith. What else? So the Brogdon trade, like I said, we gave away a lot. I really like Brogdon. I do think Brogdon will come off the bench. I really think the Celtics, from what we've seen last year, they want to go big. They want to be physical. And you're going to have a really big second unit too, depending on who they sign as a backup center, which I do think is a priority. Right? Because you have Malcolm Brogdon, who I believe is 6'4", Derek White, who's 6'4" at the 2. Their backup 3 likely will be, I don't know, either Sam Hauser, maybe, or probably Gallo. Backup 4, they're probably not going to really play him at the 3. They'll probably play Tatum and Jalen at the 3 most of the time. They have Grant Williams, who's obviously a big physical guy, at the 4 position. Gallo's no small guy either. I believe he's 6'10", so he's going to be pretty sizable at the 4. And then whoever our backup center is, I think is going to be a guy with some pretty decent size, some guy that can produce a little paint protection. We'll kind of talk about some of those guys in just a sec. But yeah, I think we're going to have a big physical unit. I think we can keep the same identity. Gallo isn't much of a defender, but at the same time, if you have a guy that's 6'10" and the rest of the guys are plus defenders, I don't think it's the biggest thing in the world. It's not like a guy like, say, it's 6 feet tall that can be easily picked on. A guy at 6'10", you're not going to back him down. You might be able to try and get him in isolation, but a lot of those isolation buckets are really hard to get. He's not so terrible he's going to be like slipping on ice over there like Enes Kanter. So yeah, I'm extremely happy with what Brad's done so far in free agency. I'd give him probably an A so far. I've been super impressed. I really liked it. I probably would have rather got TJ Warren, but who knows what he winds up signing for. There's obviously more of an injury concern with Warren, but he's another guy I really would have liked to join the team. Obviously, I thought Kyle Anderson would have been a huge addition, but I believe he signed for a little bit more than what the not the taxpayer MLE was, so I don't think he was going to sign with Boston no matter what. I was hoping maybe a sign and trade could be worked out if that's possible with a TPE. That kind of brings me to the TPE. I really don't know if we're going to wind up using it. The only position I think we really have to like add to our roster without it being kind of overcrowded would be maybe a backup center position, because I do think it would be beneficial for the Celtics to kind of build in days off for Al Horford and Robert Williams. Al's obviously getting old. He's not getting any younger. And Rob's had injury history, so I think it'd be very beneficial for them, trying to limit their minutes, trying to limit their games by getting a guy who can come in and really be like a plus player, a guy that's not going to be like setting minutes on fire when he comes in, like we saw with Enes Kanter at points last year. Tice was obviously fine, but he was making quite a bit of money. We're hoping we can bring in one of these guys for a vet min. Or we could do the TP, like I said. I believe Jakob Poeltl. He's a guy I've heard the name float out there a little bit. I'd really like him. He's a guy that's a lot better rim protector. I think gets a lot of credit for. I think he gets credit for a lot of times, but he's a really solid defender. I don't know how much he'd really like that role after being a pretty significant player for the Spurs last couple seasons. But that's really the only TPE target that I've really heard too much about. He's the only one that doesn't seem like it seems like the situation fits, because it seems like the Spurs are just tanking after trading Dejounte Murray. But yeah, so that's my only TPE target at this time. Along with that, some things I think are some other players I think we might sign with the vet min. Like I said, I think it's center only. I'm going to repeat some of the names that I said last time because they're still available. I believe Thomas Bryant, Gorgie Dang, and who's the third one I had? Thomas Bryant, Gorgie Dang, and can't think of the third one right now. Thomas Bryant, Gorgie Dang. It'll come to me in a sec. But those two guys, they're just going to be solid enough. Bismack Biyombo was a name that I mentioned, but I believe he re-signed with the he wound up re-signing with the Suns. But I think if we get either of those guys, I think those guys are solid enough. We won't really miss a beat. We still have Luke Cornett, who's not terrible. He's definitely not great, but I think signing one of those two would be really, really beneficial for this team and be really helpful to help working in minutes. We obviously, with an older player, a guy that's injury prone, wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of center depth. Even if you maybe might think a little higher of Luke Cornett than I do, it definitely wouldn't hurt to have another center that's a playable center. What else do we have? So we've talked about all the free agents. We've talked about the big Brogdon trade. I think Gallinari, we're just waiting to sign waivers. It seems like that's pretty much locked up, that we're going to sign him for a 2-year deal. We're at the MLE. That's going to be, so it's going to be worth like 11 mil total, about 5.5, I think 6 a year, something like that. So far, very happy with free agency. What else? There's something else I want to mention. Oh, Will Hardy. Will Hardy is going to be the new head coach of the Utah Jazz, and a 5-year deal. He was his coach for the Celtics. So that's congrats to him. Obviously it hurts to lose one of your top assistants. I don't think it really has too much impact. I mean, we'll see. The Celtics come out and, I'm not exactly who he's in charge of, but the Celtics come out and they're just not the same team. Maybe Will Hardy had more of an impact than I thought, but I just don't think assistant coaches really have like that much of an impact on a team. So I'm still confident that they'll be fine. Great for him. It's good to see guys in the Celtics assistant coaches like ranks get these opportunities. So that's awesome to see. And it's under Danny Ainge, who, obviously the Celtics ties there. But just some other news from around the league. Some other news from around the league is we've seen Kyrie. I believe he demanded a trade. KD demanded a trade. We had the Dejounte Murray trade, which I think was very good for the Hawks. I think that's just like that was a no-brainer for them. They want to be as competitive as possible. I mean, Dejounte Murray, I just love Dejounte Murray. He's just a gamer. He's a guy that can pretty much do it all. Not really a great shooter, but he can defend at a super high level. He's a great playmaker. He's a good scorer. I think him and Trey will be an interesting duo. I think it's going to probably help Trey out a little bit, taking away some of the playmaking duties. I never really like it when one team's too ball dominant with one player. So having Dejounte to break it up, I think would be very helpful. And what else do we have? Oh, yeah. So, like I said, KD's trying to force his way to Miami or Phoenix. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. We also had out west, Minnesota acquired Rudy Gobert and gave up, I believe, 4 picks and this year's first round pick and Walker Kessler to get him, which I think is a big overpay for Rudy Gobert. I mean, if it works out for him, it works out for him. But I just don't think they were the team that was like one piece away. I think they're probably like a couple pieces away, and they just pretty much mortgaged their whole future. I mean, you saw in a similar situation with Boston when they traded away KG and Paul Pierce for all those picks. It really didn't work out for Brooklyn. So, I'll see what happens when, some of their players, these rookie deals run out and they're looking to re-sign. They might go elsewhere, and then you're stuck with Rudy Gobert, who's just known not to be a good playoff defender. Like, have Rudy Gobert and Cat on the court seems like a great idea. Having these two bigs, like how the Celtics were so successful, and even the Warriors at some point with Looney and Draymond. But then you kind of look at them chasing around the Warriors. You're gonna be able to chase around Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on switches and all this. I know they'll probably play a lot of drop coverage with him, but it just seems like he's probably gonna get exposed against some of those better teams. Rudy Gobert hasn't had a great playoff resume. I think he's gonna help them all in the regular season, which I mean, if that's what they need, they'll help them probably against some teams, but I just don't think it's like that great of an upgrade. When I originally saw that it was going to be like, oh, a couple players, and they said there were some picks involved, I was like, oh, that's a pretty good deal. Maybe 1 or 2 first-round picks, that's fine. But like 4 and your first-round pick from this past year, like that's a lot to give up for a guy that I just never been very high on Rudy Gobert. So, yeah, I think that's a lot of the big stories. It looks like Kyrie, if he's going anywhere, is probably going to LA, which I think they're just trying to work out a deal for Westbrook because obviously LA and Westbrook didn't really work out last year. Like, who could have thought that having a guy that's a ball dominant non-shooter next to LeBron wasn't going to work out? So we'll see. We'll see if they're able to get that one done. Any other big stories around the NBA before I bid you guys adieu for next week? I don't think there's really anything on my mind. I know I'm probably forgetting something, but so far, you know, Donovan Mitchell. I don't know if the Jazz are just going to continue to build around him. I know the Warriors also mentioned trading for Durant. I've heard a little bit of speculation on that. Basically, just trading Wiseman and Wiggins for, and maybe either Poole or Kuminga for Durant, which would be interesting. That is about it. I think that's pretty much all I have. I think Summer League's underway. I haven't really watched any of that yet with everything that's going on. But as you guys are listening to this, it will be the 4th of July. So happy 4th. And I'll see you guys next week. Hopefully, once again, we'll have a little bit more of a crew here. So it's not just me talking at you for 15 minutes at a time. And you guys enjoy your holiday.